You're listening to the Unstoppable Podcast, the go-to place for everyone to learn about the latest innovations in Web3, NFTs, and the decentralized web. Welcome to the metaverse. Shipping address, credit card, employer, are those still important pieces of information to tie back to like an NFT domain, which could be your digital identity?
I think so. And it's basically everything that you have to type on to a form online, right? So it's like every time you fill out a form, every time I check out somewhere, they're like, what's your address? What's your credit card? That's some information that I think would be useful to have stored once, and then I don't have to retype it across 50 different places. And that's also information that would be great if I had as a part of my data, and it was something that I could build a system where I don't necessarily have to give that to the service provider, but I'm still able to give the service provider the information they need in order to do their job. So I think those are great examples. If we're talking longer term, I kind of mentioned a few earlier that I think are going to be useful for everyone, like credit score, I think is pretty important. There's all sorts of places now when you check out online, it's like, hey, would you like to borrow money and pay this installments? So credit, I think, is natural. And then I think identifying information, KYC, proof of humanity. There's all sorts of rewards programs, communities, etc., where they're going to want to know that you're a real human being. And I think that'll build better social networks. Like one of the side effects that we don't think about here is we have lots of different misinformation or information problems online right now. I think a lot of the reason behind that is people don't have identifying information behind them. And if you look at it, there's, some of these are produced by like 12 people or whatever will produce, 99% of all misinformation on a given topic or something. But if you could see the reputation of the person making those posts, then I think that people would be able to make better decisions as well. So in addition to giving users more power online, it also, once you have a reputation, that reputation can precede you across these networks, so that I think people will be able to make better decisions about the data that they're receiving. So I think that's also a kind of a side effect. And one of the problems we have on the internet today is, it's hard to know, is a review that you see online, is that truthful or not? And if people had to have consistent reviews across all the different sites and they were tied back to a persistent identity, I could trust that Amazon review for 5 stars. So I think that this is going to shine a light on a lot of areas of commerce that I think will improve your interactions online.
We talked about how you can, as a user, as an owner of this digital identity, you can associate different data points to it. And we just covered a bunch of them: your crypto address, maybe your like social media profile. And then you dove into reputation. How do you see like that reputation in terms of badges and the applications and services giving you these data points you connect, right? Like, would a future Yelp give you a badge that says you've eaten or you've reviewed at 100 different Yelps or 100 different restaurants associated with Yelp, and now because you have that badge, like you have that reputation? Is that kind of how the reputation works, or am I thinking about it in the wrong way?
I think that's a reasonable way for that to work. And people are already doing this. I think one of my favorite badges right now in the crypto community are these things called proof of attendance protocols, POAPs. And they just show that you've been somewhere. And like, I know if someone has a POAP for being at the Denver conference or the New York City NFT conference, like I know they know a lot about NFTs. And I can see that very readily by just looking at their profile and saying, oh my God, I was there too, right? I have a conversation topic immediately. Well, now imagine this on the internet, right? So like, imagine you go to a Reddit forum for motorcycles and you can see that a guy has a badge for being at Sturgis, which is the giant motorcycle meeting in the middle of the country. I actually don't know. I have not been. So, but I'm just saying, like, you would immediately know that person's legit, right? And then you could have another one maybe for your hometown. So if you're like from Decatur, Georgia, right? And you could have a badge for being like actually physically attending something in Decatur, Georgia. And now I know that, if I live there, that would be my neighbor and I would be very certain of it. So if I'm on an online forum, like Reddit has a lot of community forums, but does that person really live in my community, or are they just commenting on my community that they're not actually there. And most of these things right now are moderated because we just trust people to be good online, and we're like, oh, of course they live there because they say that they do. But we've actually learned that's not the case, right? There's a lot of people with a lot of incentive to not tell the truth about some part of themselves and insert themselves into conversations, for trolling or for other reasons, just to make these conversations to lower the overall quality of the conversations that you're having inside of these digital communities. And so I think that badges are great for that. And you could even imagine a DeFi forum. And it's like, oh, do you have a badge for doing at least 10 trades on Uniswap, 10 trades on SushiSwap, being in a pool too, having been a part of this OHM, or whatever, all these different things, you could see it. And there could be, a forum for NFTs, and it could really verify like, hey, how many mints have you been a part of? This type of stuff. And it's that reputation that gets built up. And we take it for granted. People have reputations in their lives based on their history. And if you think about it, we guard our reputation very closely. Normal people, right, for things like their jobs, on LinkedIn, on these other places. But when we go online, we don't have that same sense. People just kind of, leave a review or real quick or whatever. And what's happened is, in this void, because there's a void for building value and reputation online, it's been filled by a lot of spam. And I think that that will be addressed because we'll now allow real digital identities and real reputations to be built. People are just going to do it naturally, and then they're going to crowd out all of this spam that we're currently having in the space. So that would be my optimistic viewpoint around establishing online identities. And it's kind of like, I'll let you, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Go ahead.
No, I love it. I had a thought as you were talking about like the badges and the reputation. And one thing I'd like to make more clear for the listeners is, so with POAPs right now, I believe when you get these proof of attendance, NFTs, they don't actually sit in your wallet. You can view them on the POAP website. And I could see badges, and maybe that's just the term we're using for this reputation verification right now, is you could have literally thousands of them. And do those just sit in your wallet, or how do those actually tie to your NFT domain? And I ask this because right now I feel like a lot of our NFTs, whether it's art, collectibles, music, a PFP avatar, they just sit in this wallet, and it's like this big folder of just a bunch of things, right? And the NFT domain is a separate NFT you own, and we want to associate all this data with it. So do these badges just sit in our wallet, or do they get organized and indexed within our NFT domain in a really much more readable, or even going back to your UX comment, just a better user experience, so that you can then take those and interact with dApps across, the Web3?
Yes. And I think some of them are going to be minted on chain, just like you can mint some POAPs on I forget which blockchain they're using, but it's not Ethereum. It's one of the other ones. So you can actually mint them. But I think some are going to be on chain, but I think what's actually going to happen is what you're going to store on chain is proof of these badges that you have, and then that can be checked against the data that you're providing. And this is basically what rollups are trying to do, and what all this technology is supposed to do is trying to pack more stuff on chain. So on chain, instead of storing that 80,000 different badges that you have from everywhere where you're online, you actually just store an aggregate checkpoint that says that these badges were verified at a given point in time, and then you're going to be able to share those badges, like a link to your OpenSea profile, or a link to your POAP profile, or any of these other systems off chain where they could be pulled in and aggregated. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done around aggregating badges that they can all be performed off chain, so that can reduce the transaction cost for doing those. But I think they're going to be on and off chain. And you're probably right. The majority will probably be off chain just because it'll be cheaper.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and that's really where the value of this NFT domain comes into play, because you can use that domain and associate the off-chain data with it, which then gives you access or credibility, and that's your reputation. Whereas having thousands or hundreds of badges minted on chain and sitting in your wallet may not be the future you envision. And so, and that brings, if that were to be true, that makes the value of an NFT domain or having one for yourself even more important, right? Because you need that connecting point to the reputation that you can carry with yourself across the internet.
Correct. And you're going to want to have something that's on chain that is associated with the things that you have off chain, because you're going to need to have an on chain thing where you're going to need to have an on chain endpoint, identity in this case, where you can sign to prove that all this off chain data that you're saying is accurate. And what's going to happen is the people who store all that off chain data are also going to sign and then store proof on chain as well, so that people can verify it. This way they don't have to take your word for it.